The Star Sport podcast is brought to you by Access Credit Union. Access Credit Union, funding dreams for over 50 years.
Close your eyes and pull like a dog.
And a new Irish record for Phil Healy, 22.99.
Christy Cooney hands over the Sam Maguire Cup to Graham Canty, Cork All-Ireland champions for the 7th time ever.
Hello and welcome to the Star Sport podcast. My name is Jack McCarran of the Southern Star and I'm joined by Star Sport editor Kieran McCarthy. Before we kick things off, I'd just like to give a gentle reminder to our listeners and viewers to please rate, review and subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify and YouTube. The Star Sport podcast is brought to you in association with our friends at Access Credit Union. Access Credit Union, where your bank really does matter. Choose a credit union, choose local, choose community. On this week's podcast, we'll be joined by four-time All-Ireland winning Cork goalkeeper Martina O'Brien, who just last week announced her retirement from inter-county football. The Ballinascarthy woman will continue to line out at club level for Clonakilty, but she's brought the curtain down on a remarkable decade-long stint with Cork, which also included 6 Division 1 league titles. We're also going to chat with Tom Savage of Three Red Kings about the current state of play for the West Cork contingent involved with both Ireland and Munster. Innishannon's Jack Crowley made his Ireland senior debut against Fiji on Saturday, and he seems to be well placed in the race to become Johnny Sexton's understudy ahead of next year's Rugby World Cup. And we'll get Tom's thoughts on Crowley's growing reputation. But Kieran, before we dive in to those conversations, a quick roundup of some of the big West Cork sporting news making the headlines this week. And first off, the Ballinascarthy hurlers were beaten 15 points to 1-9 in the county semi-final by Kilshannig on Sunday, putting an end to a memorable season. But there's no doubt that they'll be disappointed with the prospect of facing yet another year without reaching a county final.
Yeah, Ballinascarthy's way to get back into the Cork Junior A hurling championship final stretched to 33, 34 years now. I think 89 was the last time they got there. So they lost to Kilshannig last weekend, and from reading the match report and reading their manager Joe Ryan's reaction afterwards, the best team won. So there's no complaints whatsoever from Ball. They come up against a really good Kilshannig team that were worthy winners. The Kilshannig now go on to the County Junior A hurling final, but still disappointment for Ballinascarthy. They're back-to-back Carbery Junior A hurling champions, and they were hoping to make an impression in this year's county series, and they beat Valley Rovers in the quarter final. But I think it's fair to say that they never hit the heights of their Carbery Junior A hurling final performance that day. They were on fire that day. They weren't as under game as you could say against Valleys, and they just lost to the better team last weekend. So disappointing into the season, but at least there's a consistency for Ball now. They're winning West Cork year after year after year, and each year they're in the county series. It is more experience for them. So hopefully they can take the next step in the seasons to come.
Okay, Kieran, I also want to briefly touch on Holly O'Sullivan's latest Inside Track column, which is available to read online right now. Just go to www.southernstar.ie/sport and you'll see Hawley's column up the top of the sport homepage. And basically what Hawley has done is he's picked out a number of players who he feels have done enough this past club season to warrant at least some consideration from Cork boss John Cleary, and a number of West Cork players have made Hawley's list, including Cora's Brian O'Driscoll.
Yeah, no surprise to see Hawley pick out Brian O'Driscoll as one to watch for the Cork senior football team for next year. And Brian had a really good year again. He was very strong in 2021 with Ty McCorrick. He captained them to the Carbery Junior A football title. And this season, Brian was probably the best player with the Carbery senior football team that went all the way to the county championship quarterfinals. And I think what was important this year is that Brian did it at the senior football championship level with Carbery, and it's now very, very hard for the Cork senior football management team to ignore him, and they won't ignore him. The odds are that we'll see Brian in the Cork senior football panel, and we'll see then can he take his chance, because there's no doubt that Brian is a really talented footballer, but he's been off the Cork panel now for 4 or 5 years. I think in one of McCarthy's first year in charge of Cork, he dropped Brian off the panel. But go back before that, like, Brian was a really talented underage footballer and a really, really highly thought of footballer as well, with lots of potential. But we had Brian on this podcast last year, and I think he knows himself he made a couple of mistakes, and I suppose coming up through the ranks, but he's a different footballer now. He's after maturing on and off the pitch, and I think the time is right for Brian O'Driscoll to get his second chance, because if you do get Brian O'Driscoll playing well, he will be an asset to Cork. He's a big, strong footballer. You could see him fitting in there to the half-back line, like Hawley says. So I think this is one to watch this space.
Another of the West Cork contingent that Hawley mentioned is Castlehaven's Cathal Maguire, who's been growing his reputation exponentially over the last number of seasons, Kieran.
100%. And I think what could help Cathal Maguire, I'm not sure if he'll be called into the Cork panel or not this year, the fact that John Cleary is the Cork senior football manager. He's a fellow Castlehaven clubman, so he'll know all about Cathal Maguire. And John was only involved with the Haven footballers last season under James McCarthy. So he'll know all about Cathal. Of course, Rory Maguire's inside there. We have Brian Hurley inside there as well. So there's a Castlehaven contingent. No doubt about it, Cathal Maguire had a good campaign for Castlehaven. So it'll be interesting to see if he gets the nod with Cork. But even if he doesn't, there was a season of progression for Cathal Maguire. He's importance to Castlehaven. So I think he'll be happy with his own performance, even though the Haven will have been disappointed to bow out at the county semi-final stage. And when you look what happened to Nemo last weekend, it's been a funny old season. Castlehaven just went under the St. Finbars, who then underperformed against Nemo Rangers, and Nemo then underperformed against Clonbell Commercials in the Munster Senior Club last weekend. So I think it just goes to show that there's not a lot between the top teams in Cork there at the moment.
One more West Cork footballer mentioned by Hawley in his column is his own clubmate, and that's Carbery Rangers' Keelan Scannell, who Hawley says is definitely one to keep an eye on. Maybe it's too soon for him this year, but John Cleary would be remiss not to be keeping an eye on Keelan.
Yeah, the Keelan Scannell has been a very promising young footballer for the last couple of years. He was involved with the Cork underage teams as well, and he's made that step up to the senior football of Carbery Rangers, and he was one of their best performers this year, and it was a good year for Carbery Rangers. They got the show back on the road. I know teams don't like using the word transition, but Carbery Rangers are very much a team in transition as Declan Hayes brings some young guns on board, and Keelan Scannell is one of those, and he'll be quite happy with his lot this year. And as Hawley alluded to, one of the players that stood out for Hawley in this year's championship. Maybe one more so for the future with Cork, but it's good for Keelan that his name is being put out there and that he's on the radar for people like Hawley.
Yeah, and as I mentioned, you can read Hawley's full column. He's picked 8 players who he thinks John Cleary should be keeping an eye on, and that's on our sports section on the website right now, even www.southernstar.ie/sport. And lastly, Kieran, the Carbery Hurlers are on the hunt for a new manager following Charlie Vaughan's decision to step down. Where does this leave the division's hurlers going into next season? And just in general, what's the outlook for divisional size at the moment, given the ever-changing landscape of club football and hurling across Cork?
So yeah, Charlie Vaughan has stepped down as Carbery senior hurling manager. So the Carbery board will be on the lookout for a new man to lead the Carbery hurlers. And it's probably fair to say too that the hurlers were overshadowed by the Carbery footballers this year. It was the Carbery footballers within that superb run to the county quarterfinals, while the season wasn't as memorable for the Carbery senior hurlers, who also had that new format this year. So they had more games than in previous seasons. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with both Carbery divisional teams. In our recent Carbery J News in the Southern Star, they alluded to it'll be a conversation to be had at the upcoming Carbery convention, what the future is for both teams. Both teams will line up next year. The Carbery footballers will be looking to I suppose, build on what they achieved this year. They played 6 games. They won 5 in their divisional section to win the Jack Crowley Cup. So it was really was a season of progression for the Carbery senior footballers, and they'll be keen to keep that going and push it on even next year. Whereas the Carbery hurlers are starting from a lower base. You know, they want to get things up and running. How the calendar will look in 2023 will be interesting too. There is some talks that the divisional championships, as in the divisional Premier Senior Championships, could be pushed forward earlier in the year to April or May from their summer date this year. I'm not sure if that'd be a wise move. I know the calendar is so condensed at the moment, but if you bring forward those divisional county Premier Championships to earlier in the year, what it does then for that team coming out of that, it's just a bigger gap before they get to play the club side in the quarterfinal. So I think it's one to watch over the next couple of weeks when we see the schedule for the 2023 Cork GEA calendar.
I was on mute there, Kieran, so there was some dead air there. Don't worry about it. Listeners don't notice such things. But just a question I wanted to put to you before we hear from Martina O'Brien, and it's unrelated to West Cork sport, but I still wanted to get your thoughts on it, and that is this big box office interview that your hero Cristiano Ronaldo has given to another of your heroes, Piers Morgan, on some channel deep down in the Sky channel guide. So Ronaldo basically has come out and slated the club that's paying him, I would guess, £500,000 or so a week, because he's not playing, basically. That seems to be my reading of it. He's making out that there's a lot more to it than that, but to me it's as simple as he's not getting his game, so he's decided to do this interview. But what do you, as a long-time United and I guess a long-time Ronaldo fan, make of this whole flare-up in the last few days?
This is what happens when two egos collide, when Piers Morgan and Ronaldo. It's a very odd friendship in some ways, and I've seen some clip there. Like, we've been teased with the clips over the last couple of days when Piers Morgan asked Ronaldo, what would you interview now? And I think Ronaldo replies, because I like you. You know, it's just this really weird romance between Ronaldo and Piers Morgan. So unlikely, but like you said, it really is box office. I think for Ronaldo, he just, like I said, ego. He's in the dying embers. Well, not the dying embers. He's in the closing stages of a remarkable career, and it's like he's fighting against the dying of the light. He just doesn't want to exit stage left, and the reality is that he is yesterday's man for a large part for Man United. Like, he's not part of the future. I think he's proven this season as well that he's not the player that he was. You know, kind of, I know you've the Ronaldo fanboys out there saying that he needs to start, he needs to play, but he has started in, I think it was 4 games in a row there, and he was missing chance after chance after chance. There was chances being put on the plate for him, and he still wasn't putting them away. So what an incredible career. But I think his time at United was coming to an end in a way, because he's not the player that they need to move forward. And this now, it's bringing it all to one huge head, because it has to be sorted now. But even just the timing, like young Garnacho, what an incredible goal to beat Fulham. Like, he should have been in the back pages of those Monday papers. And next thing, old man Ronaldo comes out with his kind of shedding his crocodile tears and all these allegations that he's making about United, and they come out on Sunday night. It started to be teased, and now he's the story again. And I think that's what he likes. He's a man who knows how to put himself at the centre of the story. It's like when he left Old Trafford before the end of the Spurs game, he knew that would steal the headlines. He knows when he goes up to before the game, the Sky cameras, when he doesn't shake Carragher's hand or he doesn't shake Neville's hand, he knows exactly what he's doing, and he knows exactly what he's done here as well. He's made himself the story. He's made himself relevant. But I think this will come back to bite him in the arse, because I just don't know how United can continue their relationship with him. I don't know how he can play for Man United again after saying that he's no respect for Eric Ten Hag. And to be honest, at this stage now, I'd much prefer to hop on the Eric Ten Hag train than I do on the Ronaldo train. The Ronaldo train is slowing down and it's about to stop. The Eric Ten Hag train is powering forward, and it's going to a better destination. So thanks for the memories, Ronaldo, but I think it's time to exit stage left and say goodbye to Old Trafford.
Just a final point on that then. You say thanks for the memories. How do you feel this affects his United legacy amongst, say, United fans in particular? Like, does it tarnish it, or will it all be forgotten about in 2 years when he retires and he comes back on some kind of a retirement tour to come out and wave to the fans or something to that effect? Will he be welcomed back in 2 years, 3 years once he finally hangs them up, or has this soured the United fans' relationship with CR7?
I think it has to sour to some point. It's such a messy exit. In fairness, some of the stuff he's saying, like, about the Glazers, and he's kind of shining a light on how United have stagnated in recent years. And I think that's something that all football fans have seen. The fact that United for the last 10 years, they've done very, very little, and the club has gone backwards. So in terms of highlighting them and kind of slating the Glazers and so on, like, you can see why he's done that. But it's just a vehicle that he's using, Piers Morgan, and his timing of it, and just some of his comments are just kind of they go beyond the point of no return. To use the word betrayal, that's such a strong word. That's why I'm saying, like, with Ten Hag, I just don't see how there's a return for Ronaldo under him. But has it tarnished his legacy? Probably a small bit, but players have left under a cloud before, and kind of we all look through nostalgia. It's always rose-tinted glasses. So fans will probably look back on last season more than this season. They look back at his first stint more than his second stint. So while it will be a messy exit now, he'll still go down as Man United legend. But I don't think we'd see a Ronaldo statue outside Old Trafford at some stage in the future. But if you go back over the years, like Wayne Rooney tried to leave United during his career as well, and he still looked on as a United legend. Roy Keane had his exit under a cloud from Old Trafford. David Beckham the same. Ferguson kind of said enough was enough. It's happened with the likes of Stam and Van Nistelrooy. All these really, really good players have left under kind of circumstances that they probably wouldn't have liked to leave the club. And so, okay, Ronaldo is one of the greatest footballers ever. He's United legend, and it tarnishes it to some degree. But sport is fickle, Jack. Sport is fickle, and after all that I've said, is there a chance that Ronaldo could let out for United in January? Of course there is. It's football. Money talks, because who's going to take him? And how is he going to leave him? What's his exit strategy going to be? And when United tear up his contract, and if United want to sell him, will he want United to pay up what he's owed? Like $500,000 a week is ridiculous money for a 37-year-old footballer on the wane. So football, as Ferguson said, bloody hell.
Well, Cristiano chose Piers Morgan to give his explosive interview to another legend who lined out for a team in red, has chosen to give her explosive interview to you, Kieran, and the Star Sport podcast, because Cork footballing legend, Cork goalkeeping legend, Martina O'Brien has hung up the gloves after an extremely distinguished career, 4 All-Ireland titles and a plethora of other honours. A sad moment, I guess, but she's going out on her own terms, and she still has plenty of good years ahead of her in the club scene with Clonakilty.
That's a great point there, Jack. And she makes this point herself. She's gone out on her own terms. She reveals in our chat coming up that she always knew that this season was going to be her last season. She's busy with her business. Football takes up an awful lot of time, and she just couldn't keep going at the pace that she was. But what a legacy Martina O'Brien leaves. I know she'd have preferred to kind of bow out quietly and exit stage left with not much fanfare, but when you're a footballer that's given such service to the Cork senior football team like she has, that's 10 years at the top of Cork. Like, she deserves a very, very fond farewell. She's 4 All-Ireland, 6 National Leagues. I think it's 5 or 6 Munster titles as well. She was the Cork senior football captain in 2021. She was the Munster LGFA Player of the Year in 2020. She's one of the top goalkeepers in the country for so many seasons. So it's only fitting that Martina gets the accolades and praise that she does deserve, because if you've ever talked to anyone about Martina O'Brien, they always highlight just how much of a leader she is, how much experience she has. That's on and off the pitch. Even before with the West Cork senior ladies football team, and we've had some of her teammates on the podcast, they said you could always hear Martina behind them, always talking, always encouraging. So she's been very much a big part of Cork's success over the years, and I think her experience will be missed, and she's just a great character as well. So while we wish her all the best for the future and congratulate her on a superb, magnificent career with Cork, she's not going anywhere. She'll line out with the Clonakilty footballers in the Senior County Championship. She'll line out with Ballinascarthy Camogie team as well. So there's a lot more to come in the club scene from Martina O'Brien, and she's looking forward for that. But as as we start off this conversation, I asked Martina O'Brien what were the reasons behind her stepping back from the inter-county scene. We're joined now on the podcast by Martina O'Brien to chat about her recent decision to step back from inter-county football. Martina, I have the tissues ready here. I hope you have the tissues ready there, because this is going to get quite emotional over the next 10 or 15 minutes.
All the crying's done, it's fine.
Oh, good stuff. Just take me back to, so like I said there, you've stepped back from inter-county football with Cork after 10 years with the seniors. What's the thinking behind that decision?
I suppose there's a few things really, like definitely in the last year, 2 years, I suppose, since kind of COVID and everything, work kind of coming back to normal. It's just ramped up really, like, and time was the biggest thing, I suppose. Time, and probably the body wasn't able to do as much as it could do. But I suppose the time and that kind of interconnected. You didn't have time to maybe give yourself enough recovery, which then impacted on you going to training and matches and everything a little bit more tired than I usually would have been. So yeah, it definitely would work. I was kind of not giving enough hours to it in the day, really. Like, you know, there'd be kind of gigs coming up and jobs coming up that I'd be saying no to because I knew I had football. And there comes a stage to that you just can't, you know, be doing that anymore. And I'm self-employed as well, so, you know, I suppose you can't be turning down work every second week, because people just aren't going to come back to you then, you know. And if you are trying to build your business and you're looking to the future, football is going to be gone at some time. So I suppose I had to really sit down and think about it. And then look, the body just wasn't recovering enough. I think since 2018, I don't think we really have had an off season, because from 2018 we rolled into 2019, and then 2019 we rolled into 2020. And I suppose then when COVID happened, we just kind of trained through that, you know, as in you were training at home by yourself to keep yourself occupied more than anything. At the end of 2020, then we had our inter-county season, and then we rolled back into 2021. And I suppose in 2021 ended pretty abruptly for us, you know, like me beat us in the All-Ireland semi-final, and that was a hard one to take. And then work was really busy. So I suppose I came into 2022 thinking this is definitely going to be the last season. Like there's not going to be, I just can't give another one. So I was going into it kind of knowing myself that it was going to be my last one.
That realization, so it seems like you've come to terms with it, like that you are going to step back even before the season. Like you said there, you knew going into this season it was going to be your last. So did that almost give you time to say that long goodbye, because it wasn't a very abrupt end? You went out on your own terms. Yeah,
I think that's kind of the way I wanted it anyway. Whenever I was going to retire, that I wanted it to be kind of on my own terms and not saying kind of, look, you're surplus to requirements, you know, you can leave. But I had made a decision anyway. I knew at the start of the year that I was going to enjoy everything that came, that the season just gone. So, and I think I did, you know, every training session, every match, you know, I just enjoyed the environment a bit more. Really had like a lot of fun. I enjoyed all the girls. I just enjoyed everything that we did really that bit more, knowing that probably at the end of it, I was going, and I wouldn't be doing it again. Like even the last time we played in Croke Park, you know, you just, there's going to be a last for everything. And I think I had kind of built myself up to enjoy all those moments a bit more. And I did. Look, the year ended, I suppose. The year didn't end great for us, and obviously nobody wants to go out the way we did, but it is what it is. Sport is what it is, and I'm happy with my decision in the end of the day.
Like 10 years with the Cork seniors, incredible success over that time. I want to take you back to 2013. You were working in Kerry at the time, and the then Cork selector Justin McCarthy gave you a phone call to say, "Will you come in here with the Cork seniors?" What was it like for a young player going into that setup under the legendary Eamon Ryan with Elaine Hart? I think she'd 7 All-Irelands at the time. Everybody looked at that dressing room, Martina, it was just living legends of Cork football. So what was it like as a young footballer heading into that setup?
Oh, like it was, I suppose it was exciting to start. It was definitely scary. I kind of, when I got the phone call, I was like, really, do you really want me to come in? But look, once I went in there, like business as usual. The girls didn't take a notice. You were in the panel now. You were training. Do what you have to do, because everyone had their job. So like it was overwhelming at the start, I suppose. But you just got to grips with it. But everyone was so nice. Everyone was so good. They did give me my kind of, I suppose, period to adapt. Like, in fairness, and probably were a bit more tolerable than they would have been other players coming in. But no, it was daunting. But like, all those girls, they had, what, as you said, 7, 8 All Irelands at that stage, and they were also welcoming, and they just open arms. You know, that group of players they were just phenomenal. And no, it was something I'll always remember. I suppose that moment that I did go to training, the first training was scary time, all right, but we got over it.
And then Elaine Hart stepped away, I think, in early 2014. So you took ownership of that Cork #1 jersey, and you held it for so many years. But I know 2014 was a great year for Cork football. But you told me before, Martina, that you found that year quite hard, like kind of that you were very self-critical of yourself, even though you were the Cork #1, even though Cork were winning all around them. Like, did you were probably very, like I said, they're very critical of your own performances?
Yeah, I think it was fine coming in the middle of 2013. You know, you were kind of given your chance to find your feet and whatnot. And I suppose when 2014 started in, there was more of an expectation that, look, you're here now, you've had a bit of time. And like, there was no one saying that to me. That was my own expectation, I suppose. And that's the kind of what I put on myself, that I've had my time to kind of settle in, so I should really be doing a bit more. So yeah, 2014, even though we had a phenomenal year, and like the way it ended was unbelievable. But I suppose looking back in that year was tough, because it was my first real full year. And there was expectations, I suppose, from myself, but also from outside, that, yeah, you're taking the jersey now from one of the best goalkeepers to ever play, like, you know. So that was a tough year, but I learned a lot from that, I suppose. And going into 2015 and onwards, that, I suppose, that year really set me up, because I did learn a lot. And I was given the time and the help from everybody else around me to kind of settle into the jersey as well.
They're real glory years for Cork football. Like, you won 4 All-Irelands and the bounce 2013, 14, 15 and 16. So does any one of those stand out above the others?
Well, I suppose you have to say 2014, just the way that it ended, like, being what it was, down 8-10 points down and maybe 12 minutes to go. Like, that will always be a memory. I don't think I'll ever forget even the feeling when they kind of got that goal after half time, and you kind of having that initial thought that, oh God, we might actually lose this year, to that going out of your head straight away. And like, I still get that, the kind of butterflies in your stomach when you think about the points going over, this Emer Scally's goal, Rona's goal, us leveling the match, and then the feeling afterwards. You know, you'll always have that, and it'll always be there. I think that's probably one of the most special ones. And 2016, I suppose, the last time we won a 2 would have been another special one. But to be honest, everyone is going to, like, 4 All Irelands. You can't really pick one out being better than the other either. I mean, we're lucky to have one, never mind. I'm lucky to have one, never mind to have 4.
I suppose for 3 of those All Irelands under the legendary Eamon Ryan, and an amazing man, what he did for Cork football in general. What was it like to be a player under Eamon? Again,
I have to use the word being very lucky. There is so many players in Cork that probably, like, they maybe didn't get the chance to play around that time, or, you know, we had so many good players that you can't have more. You know, you had 35 on a panel, so you weren't going to have any more. So I felt incredibly lucky, I suppose, and especially looking back at it now, and what Eamon achieved with that team, and just the man that he was, to have any involvement in a team like that, and even get to know Eamon and get to train under him. Like, incredibly lucky. And I think everyone who did get that chance realizes how lucky they were, because he really was. He was incredible on the pitch and off the pitch. And if you ever had a chat with Eamon, you just knew he was special. You know, he had nothing about it. He was just the man that you saw in front of him was that he had, there was nothing else. So yeah, I think incredibly lucky is the word that I'd use.
and such success in those early years. Like I said, those 4 All-Irelands in their first 4 season. But it's been a barren spell for Cork, you could say, in the All-Ireland in senior title-wise since that last win in 2016. What was it like going from that, Martina, from coming into a setup where you're so used to winning All-Irelands, and then in the last couple of years, Cork have just been close, but just not close enough?
Yeah, look, I suppose when you're winning, you think you're going to keep winning. Like, you know, I suppose you're very naive that way. 2017, then, to be fair, I think looking back, like I can sit back now and say 2017 to 2021, we were there or thereabouts. Like we were still pushing. We got to the 2018 All-Ireland final in 2020. So it's not like we fell off the face of the earth either. I think we were very critical of ourselves over the past couple of years. And I suppose we can look back now and say, look, we didn't achieve what we wanted to achieve, but we definitely, like, we were there thereabouts. And it is unfortunate. And there's many things. I suppose we met a Dublin team that were just taking over at the time, and they were very formidable. And then look at the Meath team now. You know, you're just they're reminiscent of his Cork team starting off back when we won back in about 15 years ago. You know, so I think at the time it was incredibly hard. You're coming from winning All Irelands to not. It's very hard to see that, and we were very critical of ourselves, I think, and rightly so at those times, that we should have been doing better. But there was that transitional period for a little bit of time, but we hated that word too. I suppose transition wasn't something we wanted to see ourselves doing. I think looking back, I think we did as much as we could. Look, could we have won another All Ireland? Maybe, if other circumstances had gone our way. But look, the underage is going, like, Cork are winning every year in nearly all grades. So you think that conveyor belt should really be coming to the fore in senior. It hasn't. Probably something that they need to look at and work on. But look, there's talent there. There's always going to be talent in Cork. I think there's a lot of work going on in different divisions, and you see definitely in the West Cork division, I suppose you have these the development squads and all that kind of stuff. They can keep those going and make proper competitions out of them. I'm sure the same is going on in North Cork, East Cork, and Mid Cork, but I know West Cork are doing great work with those. So if you can keep those going and keep those rolling on to the county teams, then, I mean, there should probably be a smooth transition from one to the other. I've no doubt Cork will be where they want to be. Maybe not next year, maybe not the year after that, who knows? But they definitely have the talent for it.
That's actually a great point, Martina. Coming off all the minor success over the last couple of years, but that step up from minor to senior, like it is a big gap. So what can be done almost to help the players take that next step? Because we don't have under 20, under 21 football in ladies football. We don't have the senior B set up, and it is a big step and a big ask of young players to come off of a minor team and really make an impact straight away.
Yeah. Not many minors have done it really, like, I suppose, in the last while there, Cochet. You get some incredible girls like that, but not like, the physicality is totally different now. The fitness levels, you know, you're definitely going to be taking at least 2 years where you might have to kind of give your body the chance to adapt. I do think they need some form of a competition that bridges that gap from minor to senior. Now I know in maybe the junior intermediate grades, it'll be marginally easier for teams to take their minors out and integrate them into their senior teams. But I think at senior level, it's just too hard. So they're gonna have to look at it. I think you're gonna lose a lot of talented girls to they're not going to play football because they might not get onto the senior team straight away. So you're losing that talent that might actually peak in their 20s. Whether it's an under 20s competition, under 21, they just need something, and something that's actually going to be viable. Now, I suppose you see with a lot of teams that their minors come straight off minor and come into the senior setup. So there might be problems with those players doing too much, but they have to sit down and look at it at this stage, I suppose. Look, you see the J doing it. They do it well. Maybe, I know there's been a lot of controversy over the last couple of years about under 20s grade, under 21 minor, under 17. But, like, I think we do have to take some tips from them, or look at it and see how they develop their younger players and how they manage to kind of keep them and bring them on to the senior ranks. I wouldn't really, I suppose I don't have the answers, but I do think we need to look at it.
Well, that's a very good point. But even though it's in the Martina O'Brien in a Cork jersey, the good news for Clonakilty football and Ballinascarthy is that there's no end in sight. So is that the plan over the next couple of years? Give your all back to the clubs?
Oh God, yeah. I can't wait. I don't know how much they look forward to me coming back, because I think I'm a bit of a nuisance when I get back to training and screaming at everybody and giving out. And no, it'll be nice. It'll be the first time in a long time that I'll be able to actually. I can't even remember last time I played a league game for Clon or Bal. In Camogie, I'd say I've played a handful of games in the last 4 or 5 years. So it'll actually be nice to start from the start, go back to training. And do you know what? There'll be that bit less pressure as well. You're not running and racing. That's the sole focus. It will be club. So it'll be nice, and hopefully they'll enjoy me being back.
And look into the future. Is coaching management a sort of facet of the game that you're interested in getting involved in?
I think so. I suppose, you know, when you leave a setup like intercounty or a club or whatever it is, I think if it's very hard to leave that environment and that kind of unit, that group environment, that closeness that you get from a team. I think coaching is the next best thing, really. Like, you still get that buzz from the winning. Look, you get that team environment. Like I suppose I see it at the moment. I'm doing pitch side physio and working with teams, that you get to observe those sides of it. And I really like what I've seen, I suppose, from the kind of coach aspect of it, the management aspect of it, that you still get the ability to be, you get the enjoyment of being in a team and being involved with them. Now, albeit, I suppose you're not getting that competitive side, you're not out in the pitch. That is hard, and it's hard not to be able to do that, but I think you still get the same kind of feeling out of it. So yeah, it's something that, look, I look at. I wouldn't have any experience in coaching, and I suppose there's a lot of things I need to do before even thinking about that. But yeah, it's definitely something I want to get involved with, and maybe not right away because that would take up a lot of time too. So maybe in the next 2 or 3 years we might think about doing that.
Said about the competitive element. Do you think that's something you miss? Like when you hear that the Cork team is back training, they're going back. Well, maybe not the pre-season training, because you know how hard that is. But when you hear when the band is getting back together for the 2023 season, and you're looking at your football boots in the corner, you're saying, "Jesus, did I make the right decision?" Do you think you're going to get that itch to say, "Okay, you know, kind of have I made the right decision here?" Or are you so kind of, "No, this is the right thing. I've called it early, and I'm so happy with the call I've made"?
I think a bit of both, to be honest. I think when you, definitely not at the moment. I'm glad I'm tucked in at home at 7 o'clock in the evening when you hear they're going out to the gym or they're doing something else. So I'm happy enough at the moment. But I think when it comes to the competitive side of it, when the games start, when league matches start, when championship gets underway, it's that kind of stuff you'll miss, because it's that competitive edge, that it's the training, it's going to training, it's that environment that you miss. Like, it's not the physical training itself, you know. Sometimes it's really just the environment, and it's the competitiveness of training. You'd go to training and you know you've championship in 2 weeks' time, you know training's going to be intense, you know people are going to bring their A game, and you know you're going to have to match that. So those are the things I suppose you'll miss. At the moment, no, but I do think it's inevitably going to be there when I see when I go follow the girls, and when I know that they have a match coming up at the weekend, or they have a league match, and you're going to see it, you'll get that kind of sense of sadness, I suppose. But I think I'm still okay with my decision. I think when it comes to it, I will be okay, because I know what they've had to do to get to that level. So it's hard. That's hard to get to their level. So no, I think overall I'll be content.
I'm going to finish this conversation on a high, and I want you, Martina, to tell me what was the best thing about playing for Cork.
Oh. There's been so much. You could write a book about what you'd love from it. It has to be, for me, the people and the girls, the people that I've met. Like Jesus, even the ladies that have been involved with us, that have been looking after us, the likes of Bridget O'Brien, Joe Shirky, Sheila Dennehy this year. Like those people that you meet, you'll never forget them. The girls that I've played with, like every single individual has given you something, and you'll always remember that person, and you'll have that personal connection with them. And I think it's those things, they're the best things. Look, I have medals, and I'm really, really glad I can leave saying that, but it's the experience that I've had with the bunch of girls. And there's been, I suppose, different bunches over the years, but every single one of them have, I suppose, impacted my life in a positive way. So that's what I really take out of it. I'll never forget those people, and I think you'll always meet them. You'll have the crack and the laugh, and you can always have a memory from it that you'll be able to chat about. So yeah, it's the people, really.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Martina. Gone but never to be forgotten.
The Star Sport podcast is brought to you by Access Credit Union. Access Credit Union, funding dreams for over 50 years.
Here and over the years on this very podcast, we've discussed the rise of West Cork rugby and the influence it's had on the current Munster setup and the Irish setup as well, both in the male and female games. The names we usually talk about are the likes of Gavin Coombs, Josh and Fineen Wycherley and others. And not to say that we've overlooked Jack Crowley's rise, but it's probably someone we haven't spoke about in as much depth. And all of a sudden, it looks like he may well be Johnny Sexton's understudy ahead of next year's Rugby World Cup. The Innishannon man made his senior Ireland debut against Fiji on Saturday and very much looked the part. And in a few moments, we're going to hear from Tom Savage of Three Red Kings to talk about Jack's debut, as well as the other West Cork contingent involved with Ireland and in Munster's win over South Africa last week. But Jack's rise has been remarkable in the last number of weeks.
Oh, it's absolutely incredible. All of a sudden, Jack Crowley he's in the conversation as one of the heirs to Johnny Sexton's throne, because with Sexton stepping aside after the World Cup next year, somebody has to take that jersey. And like Joey Carberry has been there in and about there for the last couple of years, but just for one reason or another, an injury being a huge part of it, that Joey Carberry just hasn't kicked on. So Jack Crowley's name is really firmly in that conversation. Like you said there, he made his debut, came off the bench after 46 minutes against Fiji the last day. And he looked so at home on the big stage. He looked so comfortable there. He nailed 2 conversions. He just looked so comfortable there. And talking to the people around Jack Crowley from Bandon who've seen his progression, they've always said that he's always been able to take that next step, whether it's with Bandon under 16 to under 18, whether it's with Munster, whether it's with the Ireland Days or the Ireland Emerging Talent Team. Whatever challenge he's set, he just rises to the challenge. So it's a very exciting time for him, and especially with the game coming up this weekend against Australia on Saturday night. Joey Carberry's gone back to Munster. Again, injuries, but unfortunate to him. Johnny Sexton is in a race against time. So all of a sudden, are we possibly looking at Jack Crowley even starting against Australia, or at least playing some part again, which would be incredible. And it really puts him in the conversation for Ireland going into 2023, which is a World Cup year. And on this podcast, I think we've always spoken about Gavin Coombs and how strong he's been, and he's made his couple of appearances for Ireland, and he impressed for Ireland A's in New Zealand during the summer in the tour down there. But all of a sudden, and I actually asked Tom Savage this, and this is with the greatest respect to Gavin and Fineen, but is Jack Crowley's debut against Fiji almost the most important moment we've seen in West Cork rugby in recent years? Because Jack now is so close to that Ireland rugby team, and you can see a path for Jack Crowley becoming a permanent fixture on the squad and possibly even taking a jersey in the starting team over the next 18, 24 months. So hugely exciting time for the Innishannon man. Great time too for Bandon Rugby Club, because one of his brothers still lines out with Bandon. Both his uncles on both sides of his family played with Bandon Rugby. His father Faulkner played with Bandon, so he's very much a part of Bandon. He came up through the ranks there as well. So they're hugely proud of what Jack Crowley has achieved. And Tom Savage, friend of the show from the Three Red Kings. My first question I asked him, Jack, I said, are we allowed to get excited about Jack Crowley now? Delighted to have Tom Savage of Three Red Kings back on the Star Sport podcast this week to chat all things rugby, and we have a lot to get you. And I'm going to start off, Tom, with Jack Crowley. He's the man who came through the ranks of Bandon Rugby Club and Bandon Grammar. And look at him now, one of the hottest prospects in Irish rugby, and just off the back of his Ireland senior debut against Fiji. Are we allowed to get excited, Tom?
Very much so. I think looking at Jack Crowley, he has been a guy who's been kind of on the come up for a while. You look at his skill set, you look at what he's achieved in the game to date. Like, he has been the star player for an Irish under-20 side. He has been a guy who has dominated like that level. He got into the Munster Academy in year one. He coming up on after his first year out of school. He gets promoted to a senior deal after his first year in the academy. He is a guy who has just the sky's the limit. You know, you look at he's played European rugby. He's done well there. This is a guy who has just, for me, he has everything. And international rugby was an inevitability. And I think that he has lived up to that level now. And for me, he's a guy who has, like, especially when you look at his potential, limitless.
I want to phrase this right, because in the last couple of years in West Cork, we've been so lucky. The likes of Gavin Coombs has come through to win a couple of caps. Fineen Mitchell won a senior cap as well. And obviously Darren Sweetnam going back a good few years as well. But in terms of potential, is Jack the one we can really get excited about? Because I'm thinking there's no heir apparent to Johnny Sexton just yet. There's been a couple of people auditioning for that role. And obviously Joey Carberry is probably at the top of that queue for the last couple of years. But it seems like if things go the way they are going in this trajectory for Jack Crowley, that he could be the big star coming out of West Cork rugby.
100%. Like, I think when you look at Johnny Sexton, is a guy has such a huge aura as a player that it's kind of hard to imagine anybody actually ever replacing him. Mm-hmm. But when you look at the qualities that Jack Crowley has, not just on field, but the characteristics that he has in his game, he to me seems to be the guy most suited to it. Because again, you look at Joey Carberry, a good player. Like, nobody could say Joey Carberry isn't a good player. But when you look at the personality on field, not as dominant as I feel maybe that a 10 should be for me. You look at Kieran Frawley, a guy who has had a lot of people in the Irish media and even some of the Irish coaches talking him up as being a guy who could be the next, the heir to Johnny Sexton. Personally, I don't buy that. I look at the way that Ireland have been almost trying to get game time at 10 for Kieran Frawley so he can go back to Leinster and play 10, where he's been used almost everywhere else. I think he has 4 starts at 10 this year. Like Jack Crowley, all of his starts bar 1 have been at 10. And he's played European rugby at starting 10, which Kieran Frawley hasn't done, which Harry Byrne before him hasn't done. I think when you look at Jack Crowley, he has the qualities you'd look for. Look, anything can happen in a player's development that can turn them from being a guy who's going to be the guy in Irish rugby to being just another fellow who has a decent career but doesn't ever reach the heights. But I think if you look at Jack Crowley, you'd have all the qualities that you'd expect from him. He has those. Like, for a guy who you'd want to be your main man, Jack Crowley, for me, has them. And it's all now about just getting it on field, backing it up repeatedly, and playing over and over again, and building those pictures for himself as being the primary playmaker. And I think the system Munster are playing at the moment, it suits Jack Crowley down to the ground. And that for me is the encouraging thing. Whereas if he can nail down that at Munster, and I think that it's an open road for him to do so, that he can start really building and become a guy of the scale that he needs, where it's, because I think at the moment, I think if you're to think about Ireland right now, Johnny Sexton is the main man. He is the guy there without question. Joey Carberry is the backup to Johnny Sexton. Like, I think that's something that everybody could agree on, right? Like, Carberry might not think that way, but that's the way it's certainly been selected. Jack Crowley, for me, has the personality and he has the game where you're looking at even later on this year, maybe later on this season, where we're looking at Jack Crowley versus Johnny Sexton as being an active battle for that shirt. I think that's more of a possibility at the moment than what it is with Joey Carberry. And if Ireland can even get to that level, they'll be in a much better place. But Crowley has some work to do to get to that level. He has to nail down that number 10 jersey for Munster. I think he has the potential for it. And from there, once he has that, then it's just a straight shootout. And I think that he's well placed to be that guy, like coming up and being like the most influential, the most, I suppose, well-known player out of West Cork rugby could easily be Jack Crowley. It's soon enough, but certainly by next year, I think he's a guy who's well in with a shout of going to the World Cup, and who knows what can happen there.
How does he go about nailing out that number 10 jersey for Munster?
Well, I think you look at Munster's system that Munster have looked to bring in this season. It's a big change from last year. Munster last year didn't really have a set style of play week to week. It was one of the main issues I had with the team as the season developed, where there was no Munster style. It would adapt week to week depending on the opposition. So one week Munster would be a kind of a very kick dominant team. Against somebody else, Munster would be a ball dominant team looking to play possession. There was no consistency. What Mike Prendergast has done, what Dennis Leamy have done, Graham Rowntree, like they have changed how Munster train, they have changed how Munster play, and it's quite distinct. We're going to talk about the Munster South Africa game later on, but you can see elements of it in that game. What Jack Crowley needs to do with Munster is fit that system. You need a player, a primary playmaker, number 10, fly half, whatever you want to call it. The Munster system needs to have a guy who can challenge the gain line, who can beat players one-on-one, but who can also then find passes, who can kick accurately. And then you've got goal kicking, which is a completely separate thing altogether. But from a phase play perspective, I think Jack Crowley is the best placed out of all the three players at Munster to be that guy. Because what Munster are trying to do is similar enough to what Racing were trying to do last season. And like Finn Russell was the guy for Mike Prendergast there. Jack Crowley can be the same guy here. And I think if you look at his athleticism, his ability to beat players, his ability to kind of open up his own attack. One of my main criticisms this year with Munster, when Munster have played poorly this season, has been when the number 10 has been more reliant on passing, more reliant on kicking the ball. It's got to be all three: pass, kick, run. That will be this system in complete balance. And Jack Crowley, even at the weekend, showed that he can commit defenders himself and then pass into the space that he has created. He can create his own attack, and he isn't reliant on running or hitting a big runner on his inside shoulder to create a compression. He can do that himself. And that's going to be the thing that will mark him out as being different from Ben Healy and from Joey Carberry, in my opinion.
Looking at the Ireland-Australia game this weekend, so is the ideal situation start with Sexton, but bring Crowley off the bench with 20 minutes to go?
Ireland don't do that. When you look at Johnny Sexton, even there against South Africa a couple of weeks ago, he was still on the field with 75 minutes gone because it was a narrow game and Ireland wanted to win it. So what Andy Farrell has done over the last 3 years, we'll say, has been keep Johnny Sexton on the field at all times if he's fit, if the game is in the balance. What I would like is if they started with Jack Crowley, start him at 10 with Johnny Sexton on the bench. Johnny Sexton is 37 years of age. He is the most well-known, well-scouted, well-analysed player in world rugby, I would suggest. We know everything that there is to know about him. So why not start with Jack Crowley? Mm-hmm. Why not? It's an autumn international. It's at home against Australia. Why not? Let's get a look at this guy with the rest of the Irish machine around him. Let's not do what we typically do in Ireland, which is like at the weekend where Joey Carberry was thrown in ice cold. First time he started a game in how many years, or like how many months rather. Last time he started was, I think, against Italy, which Ireland ended up playing against 13 men in that game. The last game before that was against France because Johnny Sexton was injured. We're playing him alongside new combination in midfield, bunch of new guys in the pack. And then Andy Farrell after the game is wondering what's going on here. Like, why does this not look the same? It can't be the same because Ireland have a set team, and when you go away from that set team, things will be different. Why not do it a different way? Why not have it where everything is the same about the Irish team? Furlong, Porter, Sheehan, Ryan, Byrne, Henderson, O'Mahony, Doris, Van der Fleer, Jamison Gibson Park, and Jack Crowley. Why not do that? Why not give him that opportunity to run so you can see what he's like in that situation? And if things aren't going well, or if he gets to, we'll say, get into 55 minutes, 60 minutes, then you bring on Sexton, because we know everything about Johnny Sexton. Why not have him in that role for once? I'd be surprised if they did that, but I think it depends on Sexton's fitness, because he's not fully fit at the moment either. But I think that, look, Jack Crowley is well able for it. Well able for him. Throw him into that situation, let him play, and let him develop. He's got the talent, he's got the mindset. Give him the experience to work with. That's what I would do, but I'm not Andy Farrell.
So while Jack Crowley is now in the conversation, we're saying for a place in that plane to the World Cup next year, Gavin Coombs seems to fall down the pecking order slightly. He was part of that Ireland 8 team that they didn't impress against New Zealand, and then Gavin was released back into Munster, and obviously he played against South Africa last week. So for Gavin, what does Gavin need to do to put himself back in the shop window, back in the frame for Ireland? Because if we're thinking of the World Cup next year, there's not too many games between now and the World Cup, and the Six Nations is competitive, and Andy Farrell is not going to be the experiment there. So what does Gavin need to do, Tom?
I think with Gavin, like, he didn't play well in that Ireland A game for me. A lot of other guys didn't play well either. My theory on this is that what Andy Farrell wants from his back row is not suited to what Gavin Coombs is good at. You look at the way Ireland played against that, or Ireland A played against that New Zealand team. The guys who were there were basically playing the Peter O'Mahony role, the Josh Van der Fleer role, and the Caelan Doris role. Caelan Doris and Gavin Coombs might both play at number 8, but they're very, very different players. I think that if Gavin Coombs played in the second row, I think that he would be closer to being a regular for Ireland now than what he currently is in the back row. Ireland use their back rows quite differently. Gavin Coombs would be a primary ball carrier for me. You look at him against South Africa A, for example. He was running through 2-man tackles against big men, and he was winning those collisions. Ireland don't use their number 8 like that. You will see Gavin Coombs hitting the ball, or Caelan Doris hitting the ball up at times, but not to the same level that Munster would use Gavin Coombs in that role. The Irish back row is kind of complementary to most of the ball carrying, which is either done in midfield or done in the second row. So for Caelan Doris, he would be a very different type of player. So for Gavin Coombs, he can't become Caelan Doris, because even the way Ireland use Caelan Doris to defend is in sort of like on that weird space where it's not exactly on the edge of the forward line in defense, but it's close enough to it. So if you've ever watched Gavin Coombs playing for Ireland, you're wondering, geez, he's in a position there where he's missing tackles. How did that happen? That doesn't happen at Munster, because he defends in a different place from Munster. He defends closer to the ruck, but Ireland use him further out, because that's where Caelan Doris plays, and that's what that role is. Like, people get wrapped up in this idea of 6, 7, and 8, like a blind side, open side, number 8. Like, they all mean very different things to different teams. Now, each team will have a role or a job that they give their number 6 or their number 7 or whatever else, but it's not a cliche where, okay, you're a number 6, so you will be just tackling guys now, and you'll be carrying the ball short, or you'll just be in the line out. That's not really how it works anymore. You look at Peter O'Mahony, for example, wears number 6 in his back, but like doesn't play like a traditional blind side. If you try to imagine what that look, I think most people think they imagine somebody like Dan Lydiot when they think about a typical number 6. That's not Peter O'Mahony's game, and that's not how a lot of teams run that now. So for Gavin Coombs, I think he has to just keep doing what he's good at. If that means he's doing it for Munster, make it controversial when you're not selected. Make it controversial when you're not brought up to that next level. I think that ultimately what will get Gavin Coombs back into this Irish conversation is a change in system at Irish level, where somebody with his primary ball carrying skills and his incredible passing skills as well, like he's not a one-dimensional player. But I think if you end up trying to use a hammer like you would a hacksaw, you're not going to get the same results with either. For Gavin Coombs, he's a guy who I think his role set perfectly suits what Munster want him to do. He's a core part of that Munster back five. For Ireland, he isn't. And at the moment, they're looking for guys who can be good role fits with what they know works. And it's no surprise to me to see Max Deegan all of a sudden now being talked up as being the next guy, because he's a very similar player to Caelan Doris. They're good at the same things. They have the same physical profile. Whereas Gavin Coombs, like I said, I think would be further along if he was a second row right now, because most of the stuff that Gavin Coombs does really well for Munster, Ireland tend to use their second rows for. So that's a bit of bad luck, I think, at the moment. But I think that things always change in this game. I think that if it's a case that there are a few injuries elsewhere, not necessarily just to Caelan Doris, but I think if there's a few injuries elsewhere in that Irish pack, they may need to rebalance. And when you're rebalancing, you're talking about, well, how do we get ball carrying into this pack? How do we get a primary ball carrier into this pack? And Gavin Coombs fits that description. I think at the moment what Ireland do, it doesn't fit with where Gavin Coombs is good at right now. But that doesn't mean he can't be involved at Irish level or have a good Irish career. I just think he just needs to keep hitting the ground running for Munster, dominate at that level, and make any omission of his controversial. That's all he can do.
Gavin was one of the West Cork men involved at Munster in Páirc Uí Chaoimh last Thursday night, beat South Africa 28-14. Magical night on Lee's side, under lights, 41,000. You were there. Tell me about it. Was it as good as it looked on TV, or was it better?
Unreal. What a game it was. Like I was saying to you there before we recorded, I arrived down around 4 in Cork from Limerick, and the buzz around the city was palpable, you know. And on the walk out to Páirc Uí Chaoimh later on in the evening, the pubs were rammed. Like the Idle Hour, Goldbergs, they were full of people, not just inside, but outside, 3 or 4 deep. Like, it's rare enough you'd see that outside big championship games with Cork. Mm-hmm. So walking out to the stadium, you could just see thousands of people doing the same. And the actual stadium itself, when I got out there, it was coming out at around 6:30. The scale of the place of Páirc Uí Chaoimh, it's a colossal stadium, but so many people, thousands of people milling around, eating, talking, doing video calls, the whole lot. It was so busy. And when I got into the stadium, the terrace ends were both full at 7:00, half an hour before kickoff. I've been to a lot of Munster games. I've been to a lot of Ireland games. I have never seen that. The atmosphere was building very, very quickly. And like just the air of expectation and excitement that was there. And it was all capped off perfectly when Munster walked out to Zombie at the start of the game. The energy that was there in the stadium was unreal. I'll never forget it. It was a very, very special occasion. And I think prior to that game, during the week, I was thinking, now, with a bit of COVID around the place as well, I think everybody knows somebody who's stuck in because they're after picking up COVID. And, the cost of living and, all these other things that keep people away from events that they've bought tickets for or whatever else. I only had people looking for tickets during the week. Now, typically I have somebody kind of going, look, I can't make it. Can I move on this ticket or whatever else? I only had people looking to get tickets. So people were up for this, and it was a sellout, legit. Like I was there, I looked up behind me in the press area, and every seat was full behind me, up in the top stand, in the south stand in Páirc Uí Chaoimh. All the seats were full. And when Shane Daly scored that try inside the first 3 minutes, it was incredible. What a moment. Like, Munster needed a moment early in that game anyway, but when they got it, the crowd were just unglued. And it was an amazing occasion. Just one of those things live. I won't forget that game. Just it was so special anyway because it's in Páirc Uí Chaoimh. But the way that it played out, just perfect. Just what a night. And I walked out early. I don't really hang around for the post-match press conferences. So I was just like, you know what? I'm going to head away, get into the car. I was surrounded by thousands of people walking out. You hear all the things about people talking about how, oh, what a game. When's the next game on? When are Munster playing in Thomond Park next? And all this other stuff, which kind of sounds like stuff you'd hear in, kind of a bad radio ad.
Yeah.
But it was exactly what people were doing. And just the success of the event, I think it'll echo for a while. Like, there's always going to be issues where people can't go to games. There's been some questions from people in the media about the connection between Munster and Munster fans. I think a lot of these people are disconnected from reality, I think, to be honest, because life often gets in the way when it comes to going to a sporting event. There's certain reasons why you can't have a sellout every week or 20,000 people in the stadium every other week. Life gets in the way. Things are very expensive at the moment. But this is a game where people knew about it in advance. There was excitement there. Remember, and it's not like Munster were codding people into thinking that Sia Khaleesi is going to be at this game. Eben Etzebeth. I was looking at some of the literature for Bristol are playing the same South Africa A side this week. They've got Sia Khaleesi and Eben Etzebeth in the brochure. Munster were talking the whole time about this is the South Africa Select 15. The entire time there was no dressing it up, but 41,400 people showed up anyway on a wet Thursday night in Cork, and it was a nasty night. Traffic was a nightmare. The energy that was there, I don't think anybody who was in that stadium or maybe even watched the game live on TV will ever forget it.
Is this a spark that Munster needed this season? Like, what can Munster take the positives they can take out of this game and use going forward?
Huge positives. I suppose it'll only really be truly, the value of it will only really be seen, I suppose, in hindsight. So we look back maybe in January and think that was a big turning point for Munster. What they can take from it is that even in really tough weather conditions where you might be thinking this is up the jumper stuff here, we saw that Munster can play ball. Munster can put some good phases of rugby together, and they can, like, whatever about South Africa whatever about their attacking capabilities, they were very direct. I mean, they did try to play a bit of ball in the first half, but they went away from that fairly quickly. Whatever about anything else, they were a good defensive side. They play a kind of a South African style blitz defense, which is very difficult to play around and has traditionally been very difficult for Munster to play around over the last couple of seasons. They have a huge scrum, they have a huge lineout, they have a huge maul. Now Munster struggled in the scrum, but I'll note as well, Josh Wycherley struggled initially with Thomas Dutoy, a huge man. Like, he was giving up. I was looking at it. He was giving up around 25 kg to this guy, right? But he's stuck in there. No quitting this guy. No quitting Josh Wycherley. Bit like Rabah Slimani when he was playing Claremont below down in Claremont there a few years ago. He struggled initially, but got a hold of it as the game went on. And what Munster showed is that what they do works against the big physical side. Because whatever about anything else, this South Africa A side are a decent side defensively, and they hit hard. They have a lot of big physical men who will punish you. And they had an experience, like you look at Henko van Wyk, for example, their outside centre. A lot of people talking about him being one of the best young midfielders in the URC. Before this game, you had Cornel Hendricks, hugely experienced guy for the Bulls. He was playing in midfield, but he often has played in midfield. Like, you look at the way that Munster were able to attack here. That's what gave me the most amount of encouragement. Antoine Frisch, game changer, looked absolutely fabulous. Ben Healy looked really good, best I've seen from him this season, or I think all year, actually. You look at Edwin Adogbo, an absolute superstar. This guy is going to be. He is such a freak talent at 19 years of age. Gavin Coombs impressing, running into two big South Africans every carry, getting to the gain line and over it. John Hodnett, one of the best I call him small forwards, because again, just like, what's an open side? There's all different definitions about what it is. But when you look at John Hodnett, good ball carrying, great defense. His breakdown work was so aggressive. In the build-up to Shane Daly's try, there was a moment where Gavin Coombs trucked it up to try and compress the defense. He was isolated. John Hodnett comes in and cleans out Ruan Norkia and Jason Jenkins. Two guys he's giving up 5 or 6 inches to in height, probably giving up around 20 kg to in weight, bombing him off the ball. They had nothing for him. And he was he was being dug into guys all night. That's what John Hodnett does. Great performance from him. Outstanding, I would say. So many individuals played so well. Diarmuid Barron was aggressive, was nasty. Look, you look at Diarmuid Barron. He's not a guy who is he's not going to be Dan Sheehan. Dan Sheehan is 6'3", bit like a back row. Diarmuid Barron, that's not his game. He's not that type of guy. But what he can be is just a nasty, aggressive hooker who is a pain to play against. And that's what Dermot Barron is turning into. I think they just, so many guys played so well. And in the conditions as well, they can be so proud of themselves. There's so much for them to take out of this game into the next one against Connacht. The biggest thing is confidence. We know this works now. That's what they'll be saying to each other. We know that this works. Keep at that. Keep the standards where they were in Páirc Uí Chaoimh, and we'll deal with most teams in the URC and trouble the likes. And remember, there's top players to come back into the side too. This was not a first choice or a kind of a top layer Munster side. There's so many guys out injured who'll be coming back. So many guys away on international duty who'll be coming back, like the likes of Jack Crowley, Craig Casey, Peter Romani, Tyg Byrne. This Munster side is not finished this season. They've had a tough start. It's been difficult, but I have a feeling this could be something of a turning point, but they've got to back it up now against Connacht in a few weeks.
Oh, superb. It's great to finish this conversation on a positive. But before I let you go, Tom, here in the Southern Star, I'm known for claiming anyone with a West Cork link as a West Cork person. Like Tyg Furlong is Whitty Island, like it's the Whitty Island blood that have made Tyg Furlong the force that he is. Padraig Harrington's father is down from Beara, and obviously it's that those Beara roots are made Padraig Harrington so successful. Jack O'Donoghue, whose father, Dad Neelis, went to school in Innishannon. He was there for years and years. Can we claim Jack as a bit of West Cork? Are we allowed to do that?
I think now we have to. I think that it's only right and appropriate that we induct him into the West Cork Mafia. Innishannon? Really?
His father's Neelis went to school in Kilcolman in Innishannon. So I was contacted during the week about that. So it's another great West Cork link. It's something I'm looking into a small bit more, but yeah, it's there. So it must be that West Cork blood, that West Cork breeding again.
It has to be. I think it's the only reason that any of these guys have been successful. I think we just have to just keep making more of them. That's the challenge now.
Yeah. West Cork is the nursery for rugby talent. But look, come here, Tom, you've been super at your time again, and thanks so much for coming on the podcast.
Thanks for having me on.
Okay, Kieran, before we wrap up, let's preview this Thursday's Southern Star Sports section. What can readers look forward to this week?
Man of the moment, Jack Crowley features in this week's Southern Star Sports section. I caught up with a few people from Bandon Rugby Club to chat about one of their own making his Ireland senior debut. So there's some good stuff there on that. Looking at the GA scene with the Carberry Under-21A football final. It's on this Sunday. I think it's in Clonakilty, if memory serves me correct. And it's between Iban Gales and Newcestown. And Newcestown beat Clonakilty in their semi-final last weekend. So we have a full report and reaction from that. And in Thursday Southern Star, we also have match reports from the Carberry Under-21B football final as Gabriel Rangers retained their crown, and also the Carberry Under-21C football final as Clonakilty ended a 42-year wait for a West Cork Under-21 championship. So I think it's a Southern Star that fans of Clonakilty and Gabriel Rangers will be eager to get their hands on. I also have a big interview with Rachel Welton. She's a joint captain of the Castlehaven ladies football team that won the Cork Intermediate title this year. Both Rachel Welton and Siobhan Courtney, the other joint captain, received Celtic Ross West Cork Sports Star Awards recently in recognition of what Castlehaven achieved. And there was a chance for me to catch up with Rachel and tell her story. She's one of the Castlehaven originals, and she kicked the winning score in the county intermediate football final in the 25-metre free kickoff. So good stuff there. We also have Kilmurray County Junior A Football Championships champions. So we have a full report reaction from that. So there's plenty going on in this week's Southern Star, including the Fastnet Rally 40 celebrations were on in Skibbereen last Saturday, and Martin Walsh was there. So he brings us up to date on that. And also we have an interview with Conor Horan. Dylan Mangan caught up with Conor last week to get his thoughts on Ireland going forward, and especially our Euro qualifying group. I think that's quite timely at the moment, seeing as the World Cup is just around the corner, and it's going to be international soccer time. And we also have the latest in the West Cork League and loads more. So plenty for readers to sink their teeth into on Thursday morning.
Good stuff, Kieran, and that will be in shops, as Kieran mentioned, from Thursday. But if you can't make it to the shops, you can always subscribe to our digital edition online. Just go to www.southernstar.ie/e-paper and read the Southern Star on your computer, tablet or smartphone for less than €2 per week. Thanks for listening to the Star Sport podcast, and thanks as well to our producer, Dylan Mangan. If you enjoy these shows, please make sure to rate, review, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Slán Tamil.